tuck your heavy heart in tonight. It's time to let go and slowly tiptoe home. Go home. Go home. Go home. Spinning as you crumble to your knees. No, I never heard it at all till there was.
Oh, I see. I got confused.
Fun.
It's cycling through different music.
As we go exploring, hand in hand, and
Dreamy.
dreams far away, and here we love. We'll stay. Is yet for me to see, and the dearest love in all the world is waiting somewhere for me, is waiting somewhere for me.
Yeah,
From the sky.
beautiful.
Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, Danielle Wertz. So happy to have you here.
So happy to be here.
Wasn't that beautiful, you guys? Yeah. So you have so many things that that I like with singers. Um,
That
yeah.
means a lot coming from another singer.
Yeah, it's nice to have another singer like you. Yeah, but I think you're really like I'm sure some reviewers have said you're kind of like a, a drink of cool water. It's
Aw.
you have your tone is quite beautiful and unusual, unique. Your presence in the delivery of the emotional part of the song is totally present, beautiful. You're not kind of like a you're not showing off, but you can do a lot of different things. You're quite agile and obviously studied and put a lot of time in. I can see that. You're a musician, you're with the musicians, and it was quite beautiful.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Hi, Taylor. Hi, Joyce. Um, yeah, well, so we were speaking slightly before. Danielle, are, did, let's see, you grew up in DC, right?
I did. I grew up like 10 minutes outside of DC.
Yeah, okay. And and your parents are still there,
There, Falls Church, Virginia.
which is good for you. So Danielle was telling me she had just moved to New York, and but she's working a lot in DC still. So when she goes back, she stays at her folks' house, which is perfect. That's great. So um, we can talk about anything. Interrupt me whenever you want. Go on a tangent. Whatever you want. I mean, I'll ask some questions, but feel free to, you know, tangent size. I think I just made that word up, but
Careful what you offer because it's
that's
on
okay.
TV. Also, feel free to reel me back.
That's totally fine. I'm a good listener and a good reeler too, so no
Nice.
worries. But I am curious how you came up because of all these things that I said that I've noticed in your singing, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot uh, to get those under your belt. So I'm wondering how you came up. Were you a singer when you were a kid, and how did that all happen?
Yeah, so I I often describe it this way, and I say my dad is a total lover of music. He loves classical music and listens to Debussy and also loves classic rock and also a good rock ballad and all that sort of stuff. And my mom is 100% planted in the musical theater world. She
Oh,
was like a choreographer for a while and majored in theater in college and all that sort of stuff, and kind of did community theater even through when I was a young kid.
yeah.
So, most kids when they're 8 or 9 years old, at least where I went to elementary school or listening to the radio, I was like memorizing cast albums of, of musicals. At the time it was like Hairspray and In the
Oh,
Heights, stuff like that. So,
hairspray.
yeah. So I grew up in a family of artsy folks that love creativity and the arts, and um musical theater was sort of all that I knew, just because that was what my mom's world
Yeah.
was and still is. So in elementary school I was auditioning for the school plays, and I was like Cinderella and Cinderella Junior and all that sort of stuff. um
Wait, there's a Cinderella Junior?
there's a Cinderella Junior. There's
I
so
didn't
many
know that.
junior adaptations of different stories,
Wow.
things like that. So, they just cut like 4 songs and make it a little shorter, and the the lines are easier to memorize. They're a little more concise. But but yeah, so I had a really good family friend at our synagogue who knew that I sang, and his son was super into jazz, was like a very serious tenor player, and auditioned for this community big band. And typically the season for all of that sort of after school stuff is like the school year season. So it's like August to May. And it was September and they still hadn't found a vocalist. And so they reached out to all the parents of the kids in the band and asked if anyone knew, any singers who were interested. And he sent it to my mom just because he knew that I sang. And she literally said to me, I think you should audition for this jazz band. And my direct quote was, ew, isn't jazz elevator music? I don't want to do that. And classic theater mother was like, any opportunity to sing is a good opportunity. Like, you don't have to only sing musical theater, you can sing jazz. And I was like, okay. So I end up,
It's cute, man.
yeah, right. So I end up auditioning for this band, and I didn't know any, like, they wanted someone immediately. I didn't have time to like learn a standard or like prepare for this audition at all. So I sang the national anthem for my audition, like least appropriate, least idiomatically, like it was just not. And then I sight read a few things with the band, and they were like, okay, if you want to do this, like, we'll have you. Here are a bunch of records to check out. Like be listening to Ella and Sarah Vaughan and Billy and all that sort of stuff. So, and I just totally fell in love with it. It was like, it totally changed. It just changed my whole world. I quickly pivoted and became, instead of the 8-year-old that was listening to Hairspray, I was like the 13-year-old that was listening to Duke Ellington. And so.
Do you remember how you felt when you first heard like Ella or any of those people?
I do. A cousin, I guess a second cousin of mine, somehow we like serendipitously happened to visit her in New York like the week after I ended up joining the band. And the directors hadn't given me any music or like any actual tangible physical CDs to listen to yet. And my cousin was like, oh my gosh, you're going to be singing jazz. Like, you've never heard Ella Fitzgerald. And she gave me this like compilation CD, Pure Ella. And I just remember listening to, like classic, of course. I don't know. I'm like judging myself for this being the first thing I fell in love with, but I listened to her sing Blue Skies and I was dancing, and I was like, no music has made me feel like happy and like I want to dance like this. And it just made, I just have this vivid memory of feeling like, oh my gosh, like music can make you so happy. Like, I feel like I always was listening to music for, I don't know, the story, because I was listening to cast albums. So there was always like a story to figure out and what song comes next and how is that advancing the plot. And there was something about listening to Ella sing that was just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just drank caffeine. Like, this is so, and then I couldn't get enough. And I just, I listened to every single recording that I could get my hands on and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And so you do you play an instrument?
I do now. I play piano. I play like campfire guitar, but I play piano because I teach voice and I accompany my students and for composing and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't necessarily play like a 3-hour gig just myself on piano, but I'll often like play one tune or something like that. So
Okay, kind of like me. I remember when a guitar player said, "Hey, I have a gig. You want to do the gig?" And I said, "Oh yeah." And he said, playing piano and singing." And I was like, "First of all, how do you even know that I play at all? Because I've never played in front of you." And he said, "Oh, I figured you play." I was like, "Oh, well, okay." And I went to the gig. It was in a Korean bar in LA, and people were smoking in there when there was no smoking, in the city. And he played great guitar, and I played. I didn't know how to play intros, endings. I didn't solo, but I could actually play and keep time, and I can transpose, strangely enough, and sing at the same time. So I did that for a little while. It was so much fun. I'd like to do it again, but piano takes a long time to practice and get good at. And it's not, I wouldn't mind doing it if I didn't have anything else to do. So anyway, so do you use piano to write with?
yeah, I do. It's like my primary, it's like my comfort zone for writing.
Yeah.
I, um, I've had like a couple composition and songwriting teachers sort of urge me to like pick up an instrument you don't play and try to write using that instrument because it will push you outside of what's comfortable. But piano is the comfort zone for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Do you find that you start with melody or harmony or
It's interesting. I get asked that question a lot, and it really depends. Yeah, sometimes it's melody, sometimes it's harmony. I know that's kind of a boring answer, but it sort of depends. Sort of depends why I'm writing in that moment. Like if I'm sometimes I feel like I'm writing because I'm in a mood and I want to find something that matches that mood. And usually if I'm starting from that place, I'm starting from a place of harmony first. And other times, usually like if a lyric comes to mind, there's a melody with it. And so then I'm finding harmony to sort of go with that lyric and melody that I have. So yeah.
doesn't it's not boring. It's like, it's a good answer. I mean, because when you do write, that's what happens. It writes, you know, comes at various times, right?
Right.
And it's always good to be inspired. So whatever's inspiring you. I sometimes I try and get away from harmony because my piano playing's not really what um, I'm capable of hearing, you know.
Yeah.
So it always leads me into this kind of a. If I start with harmony first, it usually leads me into more of a folky kind of area, and which is fine. I'm not, I don't want to stop myself from anything, but yeah, it's a lot of. I think a lot of my material has come, good material has come from writing the melody first, you know. So
I'm a big fan of the co-write for that reason. Like I have a dear friend who I've brought many a melody and lyrics to with like, with sort of even harmony maybe as an outline of like, I really don't want this harmony, but it kind of would go like this. But
yeah,
just like having them toss out like 8 options and I'm like, brighter, darker, there's like that whole process. So
me too. Definitely me too. Yeah, and I just went to France and did a creative workshop, which um, also focused on writing and thrown together with people to write, and which was cool because the way that I co-write these days mostly is like somebody will give me music and I'll write lyrics.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to co-write more, you know.
Yeah. I find that really fun. I feel like I also write different lyrics too when I'm
Yeah,
just in a melody and it's, it kind of pushes me outside of the even
yeah,
like
yeah.
zone of lyrics that I write with anyway. So
Yeah, and style. Like I have a friend who wants to do some writing together, and she writes like Bonnie Raitt,
cool.
and it actually kind of intimidates me. It's like, oh my God, because she really is a great writer, and but from this experience actually in the workshop, now I feel like big deal. Just get together with anyone. Doesn't really matter, you know.
Something will come of it, like whatever it is.
Exactly. So, how about school? Where did you go to school?
Yeah, so I ended up going to University of Miami, the Frost School of Music in
Oh,
Florida, Ohio.
cool.
And yeah,
My buds are down there, man. That's
yeah, down there.
yeah. So Allison Wedding or who was it? Her name has escaped my mind. The other singer who's they are teaching
Kate
the
Reed.
Kate Reed. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Allison was after my time, but Kate
Oh,
actually, I got like a very unique snapshot of the UM experience because my freshman year, Whit Seidner was still the director of the jazz department and Larry Lappin was still the director of the vocal department.
oh,
And my sophomore year, John DeVersa took over for Whit and Dr. Reed took over for Larry. So I
oh,
kind of got the tail end of
wow.
sort of that previous chapter, which was really sweet.
That's really nice. Well, now it makes more sense to me too, like how kind of what basis you had, to and kind of mentors, right? I
Yeah.
mean, Kate and John and Larry Lappin. Oh, wow. I mean, just everything really great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think UM was so helpful for me because I really showed up like firmly voluntarily confined in a straight ahead box. Like I was very like, give me the 40s and 50s and nothing else. I don't need or want anything else. And I think UM did a really good job of, yeah, of honestly just kind of like hipping me to more modern music that I really like and that I previously had kind of pushed away just because I was so, I don't know, there was something about like, Ella is what drew me to this music. And so then I almost just felt like, I don't know why. I don't know why, but I just sort of voluntarily stayed in that straight ahead box.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that feeds me now. So
Well, I think, I mean, I grew up listening to Ella, actually. She was one of my main influences. But I also, my dad was a sax player and my mom had sung, and my two older sisters sang and one played piano. So we just were doing music all the time. But the listening experience was Ella, as far as singers went, Rosemary Clooney and Judy Garland.
oh yeah.
If you think about it, those singers, even though they're different, they each have a very deep connection to phrasing and communicating,
Yeah.
and very aware musically and stuff. So, I mean, I liked that music. You know, when I was in high school, there was a lot of turmoil socially,
Mhm.
right? So the music was starting to reflect that. I was just a little young to go to Woodstock, so, but that music was really taking over, right? And reflecting what was going on. So I definitely got into that. And then I went to Berkeley, and there I discovered I discovered the label ECM, and Weather Report. Weather Report, what was that, And groups like that, really, that I was just ready, as you were probably at, UM. And so it is, I think it's just a sign, it's how we grow, we get into whatever we're into, and then something kind of shines a light, and then it's like, oh, what's that?
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
Yeah.
And I think too, I mean, I'll say was because I haven't been there in a while, but and because I know honestly how wonderful of a let's say path Dr. Reed and Dr. DeVersa are carving at UM. But when I showed up, it was like, the chick singers on the other end of the hall. It was a very like, if you're a vocalist, you're less than, and or you're not a musician, you're a singer. And I feel like that had a big influence on me not wanting to myself in the straight ahead box. There was this sort of like, if I want to return to the straight ahead box later, that's great. And I absolutely will. But for now, I almost need to like prove that I deserve to be here as opposed to just like we've all shown up here and we deserve to be here. So I think there was a little bit of that like,
Was-
oh, are we back?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There we go.
Somehow we froze together.
Oh,
Uh,
um,
Sorry, what you were saying, if I want to get back to it later, I can, but for now,
yeah, but for now, there's sort of this like I almost have to prove that I'm a musician. It can't just be understood that like, I'm at the school. There was just sort of this like singers are not worthy mentality. Not that that's the case anymore at that school, which I'm really grateful for. And I feel really grateful to have sort of watched that transition happen, and been part of that. Like my freshman year of college, there were no vocalists in the Monk Mingus ensemble. And by senior year, I was in the Monk Mingus ensemble. And, just sort of forging the like, we're musicians too, and our instruments happen to be our voice. So, and I think at the time I was quite resentful of like feeling the need to like have to prove that. And also I think in hindsight, it really it just like, you know, carved a little bit of a different path for me that now I really love. So, you know, grateful for it.
Very interesting. Thanks for your honesty in that. You know, that's
Yeah.
cool. It's a great observation. Yeah. I it's funny, you know, sometimes sometimes subjects come up that I wonder about my own response to. For instance, I remember when I was asked to write a column for a woman's magazine talking about prejudice against women in the entertainment business. And it was a little hard to find people. I mean, there were certainly some people, but it was a little hard. And honestly, like when I thought about it, now I may just be not remembering, but I thought, well, if things were, um, I don't know how to put this, if things were done to me or presented to me in a particular way and it was negative, at all negative, I just dealt with it. I dealt with it and worked around it or left it and just forged my own path. And maybe that is true and maybe that's what happened and that's why I am like I am, like forging a lot of paths, you know. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but like for instance, I can't remember. I mean, I certainly remember comments, jokes, you know, all of that kind of stuff about vocalists. You know, I certainly remember those. But as far as being treated in a particular way, because I was a singer and not an instrumentalist, I don't remember anything. Nothing stands out, which is cool, you know. And maybe, like I said, maybe I just don't remember. Or maybe I just didn't give it enough credence, you know, to bother me. But there's a question here. Taylor Hatch is a guitarist. He's at North Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, and he does interviews. He does great interviewing, but he was talking to Allison Miller. You know her, the drummer. Yeah,
Yeah.
he asked her this, and he's asking you, as a woman, can you talk about what gender equity in jazz means to you, and how can it be better?
She takes the just
Taylor asks deep questions, but
yeah.
you know, I mean, we'll break it down a little. You know, just I mean, we're talking about it. Well, we're not really talking about it. We're talking about singer, not exactly gender equity. We're talking about singer equity. Um, and I don't know if there's more to even say about singer equity. Are you feel anything like you can say anything more about it than what we've talked about?
You know, so the question was, can you talk about gender equity and what it means to you? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yes.
So,
How could it be better?
and how could it be better? I mean, I think um I'll just say whatever pops my mind first, which is I'm thinking about like jam session culture. And I think both as a woman and as a singer, I feel like so much of equity or lack thereof in jazz right now can be pointed to through like jam session culture, which is that my fiance plays alto, and if we show up to a session together and we don't know anyone, the assumption is he plays alto and I'm his girlfriend. No
I,
one is assuming that I play drums. No
yeah,
one is like, it's like, sure, he showed up with a horn and I didn't, fine.
yeah.
Or the immediate assumption is that I'm a singer, which in my case, that's true. But there are many women who are instrumentalists and show up to a session and aren't singers. And so I just think there's like, I don't know how much I can say about, and I don't know how much it is really Well, maybe, I don't know. I was going to say how much it's my place to even comment on equity in jazz, but I can at least point to those personal anecdotes of like, it takes an extra, like, I feel like I have to show up to a session armed and ready. And I can't just show up like, happy to play some music with some folks and like meet new people. It has to be like, I'm going to show up, and one, they're going to just assume that I'm somebody's girlfriend. And two, if it's like, oh, you're a singer, it's like, oh, do we really want like a singer to sit in? And that I just feel like there's this negative, or there's this almost like understood assumption that like I'm not going to be good because I'm a singer. And I don't know if that's sort of like interwoven with like, I'm also a woman, and I'd be really curious to hear from some, women instrumentalists about their experience there, or if the scenes that they're in, or the cultures that they've or the cultures that they're part of are more welcoming to them as instrumentalists. So it's hard for me to kind of separate my experience as a singer and as a woman, because they are very interwoven, but I don't know how much that answers the question. So there's my tangent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I listened to Taylor's interview with Allison. She had a very logical and hands-on answer to all that. She's like one of the best drummers around, uh, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and you're right. I mean, I have definitely. I mean, when I show up at a jam, it's also I'm older. That's another consideration. And it used to be years ago, a lot of people knew me in town because we were busy all together, right? So if I showed up somewhere, people knew me. No problem. Now it's like a lot of 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and they don't know me. So, yeah, again, it's like, okay, and if I come up to somebody and I say I want to sing, it is, it's, it is the nature of some jam sessions that they're less than welcoming, you know. There are several, like in town here, including my own, that's very open, and supportive, and come on, combining everybody, and like you say, going to have a good time with some friends, meeting new people, and making some music. That's the nice thing. It usually is kind of a proving ground, isn't it?
And I think it's just a shame that like, you know, that's kind of the culture anyway. It's like it's a proving ground, but even if I wanted to show up and have it not be that way, I feel like I'm sort of cornered into that. Like it's like,
Yeah.
there's sort of like, oh well, if you're a woman and you're a singer, like you better shred, or like it's just some
Yeah.
sort of like I better call something at 2:50, and which is like, honestly, nobody wants to do that. Like, where I'll say, I don't want to show up to a session, and I'm not showing up to a session to do that. Like,
Yeah.
so anyway,
Yeah.
but
It's funny. It makes me think of sometimes, like when I show up somewhere and it's a party and people are playing. Sometimes I don't even want to sing. It's like I just, for all those kind of reasons, I don't really. I mean, let's see. Well, I was just in France and I went over to this guitar player's apartment, and there were two other guitar players who came over. Now, I had interviewed all of them, but never had met. Well, I'd met the first guy before, but and we sat around and played and sang, and that was great. It was just, my I love guitar, and so my husband said, "Oh God, there'll be no sleeping with her tonight." But it was divine. It was just so beautiful, and they were good friends,
yeah.
so it was just very, you would have fit right into the vibe. It was just beautiful, and yeah, we just played, and we did what we do. It was great.
Totally.
Yeah.
I thought of one other quick thing, and I don't necessarily, want to talk about women in jazz for an hour, but the one last thing that I'll just say to tie it up there
Yeah.
is that in terms of equity in jazz, and again, this is almost actually more about, this is more about like a singer, this is through the singer lens than it is through just like, you know, it would be my assumption that like instrumental, you know, women who are instrumentalists would have a different experience, of course. But when I showed up to my undergrad, there was no composition in the degree. There was no requirement to take a comp class in all of the 4 years.
Wow.
And when I wanted to take comp, the semester that I asked to take it, I was allowed to take it, but there was pushback initially. And so I ended up using 2 electives and took 2 semesters of a comp class. But it's just those teeny pieces like that, where it's like, oh, like the vocalists have to be in a different improv class because they don't really X, Y, and Z, or vocalists don't really need comp because, you know, they're just going to be the singers. They're not going to be with new creative material. Like it's little things like that. And granted, I'm like so forever grateful and indebted to Kate Reed for honestly getting me through that degree, through all of the like wonderful changes that she's made to the degree program. You know, she was the one who was helping me like convince other faculty members that like I was worthy of being in the Monk Mingus ensemble, and that vocalists really should be taking comp, and that we can hang in improv classes that aren't just like, you know, 8 vocalists and a piano player and that sort of thing. So I'm just like, many folks don't know this, but I started my degree as a double major in neurologic music therapy and jazz. And by the end of my first year, I had decided I was going to drop the jazz major because I didn't think I could hang. I didn't think I could cut it. And I think a lot of that actually had to do with like, you're not good enough to take this improv class and you can't take comp, or all these sorts of things. And Kate convinced me to, even though I was declaring music therapy as my major, she convinced me to continue taking all of the courses that would be required by the jazz major. And then after that 1 semester, I switched and I actually dropped music therapy entirely, and I finished the degree in jazz. But yeah, I don't know. I think anyway, it's little things like that point to like lack of equity. It's just like, oh, you don't really need composition. Like we don't really, it like, of course, this was not the intention, but what I received from that, in hindsight, I have realized that as like a freshman and sophomore, I received from that, we don't really need your creative voice. We just need you to sing lyrics. And so, you know, I think that definitely points to a lack of equity in my mind. But
Okay, so here's the $1 million question. If they were not that, if they were open for you to take comp, and you know what I mean, if it was a different program,
yeah.
have you considered how it might be different? How you might have ended up differently?
Yeah, I mean, I've totally considered that, you know, that sort of the philosophy that like having to really prove yourself or work towards something or jump through hoops and all that sort of stuff makes you work harder. I think there is a little bit of like, there was almost like once I graduated, there was almost like, and I'll show them that I'm a composer, or like I'll show them that I can improvise like a saxophone player, or, you know, I'll be the one to like, again, use an elective and take a private lesson with a saxophone player who teaches the instrumentalist improv class, just so that I can make sure I've like gotten that information and learned those skills and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it definitely shaped my musical and creative voice at like a really important developmental time musically for me. And so I think
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not going to say I'm grateful that there was no comp in the degree, but of course I'm totally happy with where I am now, and yeah, it kind of lit a fire a little bit. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It always fascinates me, that kind of stuff. You
Yeah.
know, the losses that you have, make you stronger and, push you into things that perhaps you might not have even done.
Right. And who knows? I mean, there may have been a different fire to be lit if I was like able to take those classes anyway and I was still the only woman in those classes. And
Yeah.
that may have been enough. Is like I can hang with the guys or whatever that unspoken
Yeah.
thing is.
Which is really, it's really so stupid.
Oh, I
It's
know.
really so stupid. And, like again, I mean, and I don't know, I'd be curious to know if males go through the same thing, male singers, you
Yeah,
know?
oh, I'm sure there's a whole different, I mean, I know I'm friends with many male singers who, um, yeah, like there are so many different nuances to the overlap of like, you're a woman in jazz, you're a woman in jazz who's also a singer, you're a male singer. And so you also have all these like singer, not musician, you know, messages and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot there.
That, if I was going for a master's or something, that would be a good paper.
That would be a great paper. I would absolutely read it.
We have Joyce Glasgow here, who's a big jazz fan and an artist in Seattle. And she said sometimes you have to have an outrage. Excuse me, I have a chronic cough. Sometimes you have to have an outrageous amount of grit and toughness to get through the hurdles presented. Not pleasant or at all supportive. Men one up each other too, but it is brutal if men as a group gang up with snarkiness against females, whatever their instrument, voice, or other. Cathy, you even had a male NEA jazz master who put down women singers in your show. I did? You'll have to remember to tell me who that was separately. At his age and status, he should be ashamed of his bad attitude. People look up to him, and if he's putting down women who sing, it's disheartening. He has no respect, and I don't think of him much of him anymore as a musician and a person. Oh, I wonder who that was. My memory has gone. Taylor has a lot more great questions, but I'd like to show another musical thing.
Yeah.
And, that one that you had suggested first for the
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'd like to.
Wow, there's a lot happening in the chat. I should look at it.
It's Rest Your Head, this one, right?
It is, yeah, it's that top one.
Gently rest your head down, down. Softly let your eyes dim the light and let the night fall. Floating from the sky to the ground. Tuck your heavy heart in tonight. It's time to let go and slowly tiptoe home. Go home. Go home. Go home. Spinning as you crumble to your knees, holding shattered pieces of your dreams that now must fade and fall. Frozen as your mind turns to stone. Floods of thoughts racing through your bones. It's time to let go and slowly
Very, very nice. Wow, quite beautiful. I knew that was going to show me some of my questions. Um, yeah, the video direction is really quite beautiful. The song, that's your song, obviously. Really beautiful. I have to ask who the guitarist is.
Keith Gans.
Who is it?
Keith Gans.
Oh, God, he sounded great.
He's the greatest.
Man, he's an incredible guitar player. He's yeah. He sounded wonderful. And that was that your boyfriend on alto?
Yeah.
He sounded great too.
Thanks. I mean, I shouldn't be saying thanks, but I'm glad you liked it.
You can say thanks. Why not?
I think it's great.
Yeah, and the dancer was wonderful. Obviously, you're a dancer as well, right?
I am. Yeah. I mean, it's been a while. This video was sort of like the first of me stepping back into the dance world since college. But yeah, I took dance classes from when I was like 5 through 14 when I had to choose music over dance because I was too busy. But yeah, I took a bunch of dance classes in high school and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that was beautiful. And was whose idea was the creation of the video? I mean, how the video came out? Was that your total idea, or was it kind of you started it and then the videographer and was it
Yeah.
that kind of thing?
I mean, it's been a vision of mine for a while. I mean, I started writing this song, Rest Your Head, in 20, really, in 2019, 2018,
Yeah.
maybe. Um, and once I finished writing it, I kind of realized I was like, oh, there's more of a concept here. Like there's something happening here that I don't want to say, uh like that I don't want to have to say through lyrics. I want to say visually. And so that kind of was always in the back of my mind. Um, and then finally, when I ended up recording this record, this is the first single that's come out. There'll be a record coming out in March, but I finally recorded this and sort of realized like not very much of my music lends itself to music videos. And so I kind of felt like, okay, this is the one, and I want to make it happen. And yeah, so the videographer is Nino Fernandez, and he's based in the Bay Area, and I've worked with him a few times for video and photos. Actually, I was going to say just for photography, but he actually, the first video that you showed as part of this interview, he like filmed the in studio concert that captured all of that stuff. So I kind of went to him and was like, I have this idea, this is what I'm thinking, another dancer, this is the concept with this like sort of I almost don't want to explain it too much because I just want folks to take from it what they got from it. But I sort of laid out this whole concept and totally ran with it. And he together we found a space, and I hired the dancer, who's also a dear friend of mine, and yeah, all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. It's quite beautiful. I this may be, I don't feel like it's an obnoxious question, but I don't know, maybe somebody else would think it was. But um, what, what, because it's so artistic and beautiful, it's like this beautiful moment in time. What is do you have a purpose for it? Do you have a future purpose for it? Like how to use this video? Or did you just simply want to put out this artistic product?
that's a great question. Yeah, I don't think there's any future purpose for it.
I mean, if like to get work, for instance, would you show this video?
That's a good question. I mean, wow, yeah, that's a great question. I honestly hadn't thought about it. I am not great at the business side of things. But yeah, I mean, I might add it to, or actually I have added it to like a few booking inquiry emails in the last few days. Like I've, sent like live at this venue, and like the official music video for the single I just released. So like it's kind of in there, but it's not by any means the main thing I'm using, I think.
I'd like to offer a suggestion, which is it's a ridiculous idea, but I personally that's what I got from watching it, and that's what I would like to see, which is, and especially being that you have this history of show in you, right? This Broadway show history. I would like a show of all that kind of stuff, all those kind of, with the dancer or dancers and you singing and the beautiful music and maybe a story or I don't know, but I would love to see that. I think that would be such a unique and powerful production.
I'll think about that. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be so curious when the record comes out if you think that other tracks from the record lend themselves to the same sort of medium. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I will be thinking about that.
So, and is the recording, is the music, well, is it with the same band?
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so right there, I know a lot of people, not musicians, but other people don't realize when you have the same band playing all different kinds of music, there's there's a center, a core, and if you play, this has happened to me on a gig, but like let's say you play a Mexican song, and then somebody comes up afterwards and says, "Could we hear a Mexican song now?" It's like, okay. So the core of the band, whatever is played, that in fact, Dreamsville, the record that I sent you, that was because that had a few of my kind of more folky songs on it, and those guys are incredible jazz players, and they made it kind of less folky, and it was the whole record had this core, you know. So talking about your record, um, is it uh, is it do you have a lot of originals on it? Do you have standards? What do
I
you?
do. It's like half and half. So actually that's not true. It's 6 and 4. It's 10 tracks, 6 originals and 4 arrangements that are quite non-traditional. Like
Standard?
nothing on the whole record swings. So it's but
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. See, there's a lot of things we have in common. D-
yeah.
In fact, Dreamsville, we thought, oh, we don't have a swing song on it, so we said, oh, let's do September in the Rain. We tried it swing, and we were like, no.
We were in the studio and I was like, like we have such an amazing band here. Like we might as well track a few swing tunes. Not even that they're like supposed to be on the record or like
Yeah,
just because honestly I love all these people and we have the time, let's do it.
yeah.
And we played a swing tune and it was so fun. And I was like, yep, I'll never like nothing's ever gonna happen to this. It was fun to play it. It's just one of those like there's such a like cohesive, in my humble opinion, like vibe and sound and just like creative artistic thing that happened in the studio with that music that then to just like call a tune was like this was weird. So uh, yeah, but yeah, so it is a lot of original music, but yeah, I'll be curious. It doesn't all totally stay in this more like modern jazz lyrical world. Well, maybe that's not true. I don't know. I'd be very curious. I have a hard time describing my music. So we'll see what you think.
What number recording is this for you?
As a leader, just number 2.
Cool. And what was the first one? Was it a while ago or?
It was a while ago. It was recorded in 2016, released in 2017. It was called Intertwined with Israeli Australian pianist named Tal Cohen. I don't know if you're familiar.
No, I'm not.
But yeah, it was a duo project. He won this big fellowship competition in Australia called the Friedman Fellowship. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
No.
Part of the prize is 3 full days of studio time at ABC Studios in Sydney.
Oh,
So we had really developed this super wonderful musical relationship throughout college. And so our time was coming to a close and it was like, oh, we really should record this. And he was kind of getting ready to record his own record of original stuff as a leader too, but wanted to end up recording that here and was like, I have these 3 days in the studio. It's in Australia. I know that's ridiculous. Like, can we just check flight prices? I was like, we could get 3 days in the studio for way less than a round trip flight to Australia, but like, let's try. And I kid you not, it was one of those things where like the stars aligned. The round trip flight from, at the time it was California to Australia and back, was like $402. And I was like, I guess we're going to Australia. Yes. And, he for the majority of his childhood was raised in Australia and his folks still live there too. And so, really easy to, for him to be there. And so, yeah, we showed up to the studio with no plan. Because that's just that's kind of how our creative flow works. It was like, there's no plan. We're going to show up. We're going to arrange stuff on the spot based on what mood we're in. And if we're jet lagged, it'll be a pretty mellow record, it was that kind of vibe. So, yeah, very, very sweet to look back on it and be like, oh, the first little project. So, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I love duos. I have several duo albums, probably, let's see, at least 3. And I like small groups. You can do surprising stuff,
Mhm.
So it's pretty fun. Well, I really should ask some of Taylor's questions because he has a whole bunch. He's asking about your teaching philosophy. He wants to know if, well, in my words, if you feel like your teaching philosophy is unique, and this is interesting. In what ways are you incorporating artistic fascination in how you work with students? Wow, that's a good question, Taylor. I'm thinking of how I do that with my students, and it's like, kind of depends on the student, obviously, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to preface my answer by saying I think it's a cop out and I think it's valid what I'm about to say, but that like I think everyone's teaching style is unique
Yeah.
because especially when teaching voice, because there's so much of, who you are shows up in your teaching. I do, as of 3 years ago, I come from like the somatic voice work background, which really, 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 really works for me. And from the feedback from my students, really works for them as well. I think that was sort of the science was missing for me for a long time, at least from a technical standpoint. Like I felt like I was getting most of the sounds I wanted to get, and I was like supporting my sound the way I thought I wanted to, but it all felt like a mystery. It was like, I have good technique. I'm not really sure why or how. And somatic voice work just kind of like totally spoke to the science part of me and just kind of understanding, yeah, that it's not just the breath and the vocal folds, it's the whole body and all that sort of stuff. So, and I'm coming to find like that is pretty unique. Of course, like somatic voice work is a whole philosophy of teaching,
Yeah.
and I'm not the only one that knows about it, of course. But being so informed by science is somewhat rare, I think, actually, for some teaching studios, as I'm coming to learn. Most of my students are showing up having no idea what's happening when they produce sound. And of course, like we don't have proprioceptive awareness of a lot of what's happening. Like there are no proprioceptors in the diaphragm or on the vocal folds and all that sort of stuff. And so, to a certain extent, you could argue like, what does it matter to know what's happening if you can't feel it? But also, I think it's really empowering to know what's happening. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that side of it is unique. I think. What was the second part of the question about artistry?
Um, he asked,
Something about art infusing artistic something.
yeah,
It was a great
yeah.
question.
I know, it's really great. Hold on, he has a lot of questions. Um, let's see. Sorry.
That's okay.
Da, 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 da,
Go
da,
on a
da,
tangent.
da, 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 da. Gosh, where is this? Oh, here we go. In what ways are you incorporating artistic fascination in how
Artistic
you work with
fascination.
students? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I love that question. And I
Yeah.
think it's a really important one because so many of my students show up just wanting good technique. And I think it's so and again, like myself as an undergraduate student, I'm like, I completely and totally did that. But I think it's helpful to remember, like, and maybe it's a little bold to say, but like, what's the point of having good technique if you don't know what you want to say? To me, I'm like, the whole point of strengthening this instrument is to just be able to sing the way we want to sing and emote the way we want to emote, and trust that we don't have to be thinking about this for it to come out that way.
Yeah.
So I would say the artistic fascination piece comes in when a lot of my students are like, oh, I really just want to be able to sing, I want to expand my range and X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, great, why? And I think immediately it's just like, well, I don't know, because that's what you do in voice lessons. And it's like, but like, is it because when you're improvising, you're hearing things that are way in the upper extremities of your, of your range, and you're feeling prohibited by not being able to reach, it's just all those like,
Yeah.
why is that? And I think a lot too, I love the phrase artistic fascination. Um, a lot of my students, and I'm sure this comes a little bit from my background of maybe coming to composition a little bit later than some of my peers, but I really am encouraging my students to write. And I think a lot of them show up and they just want voice lessons, and that's and I don't mean to say just voice lessons, like,
Yeah.
of course. A lot of them showing up assuming that they'll be focusing only on singing. And
Yeah.
I think I am encouraging them, like I am giving them homework that's like, great, you want to learn this tune? Awesome. You want to learn Pennies from Heaven? I want you to come back next week, having learned the melody, having done the technical exercises we talked about, and having listened to 8 different versions of Pennies from Heaven, and coming back with which one spoke to you most and why. And I think just like asking them to go that extra step beyond just learning the tune or choosing a tune that they like, but actually listening to several different versions, and then also asking themselves like, which one spoke to me most? Like, I don't know that I even did that a lot as a younger listener. Like I would just put stuff on, and if I liked it, great, and if I didn't, great, but I wasn't asking why I liked it or didn't. So yes, I would say that's
Good answer. You
artistic.
know, good answer. And here's an interesting thing. When I was in college at Berkeley, I went to Berkeley for flute. They didn't have voice at the time.
Mm.
When I left, they got a vocal department. I was already singing, from when I was a kid. But anyway, so what I did, and I don't know exactly why I thought of doing this, but it was such a great idea. In those days, we had tapes, cassette tapes, right? So I recorded every every little bit of anything that I had listened to that spoke to me. So anything from like 4 bars of electric bass, fretless bass, or a certain lick that Aretha did, or like, and I made two full cassette tapes of that. And so they were all small, there was, you know, thousands of things on it, right? And then I then I listened to it and I wrote down the things that I liked about each one.
Mm.
And um, I felt like that was a definition of who I was as an artist, what things attracted me, and where, and it was so good. It was especially good to do at a young age.
Mm.
Um,
I like it.
and but regarding vocalists, like here in LA, it's changed so long for so much. I've been here for a long time. I've been here since I was 20, 21. So, and I did a lot of, I set up like 16 years of workshops here, not only that I was giving, but like visiting artists would give, right? And I had like, seriously, for a bunch of years, I had 10 workshops a month. And in those days, it wasn't that, there weren't so many workshops online. So people were coming and they
Yeah.
were really benefiting from seeing all these different teachers teach, and their peers, getting up and how workshops really give the student, incredible insight, right? Because you see people getting up and doing something either you wouldn't do or that you might do or that would improve you, whatever.
Mm.
So, so excuse me. Um, what was I talking about, Danielle?
The workshops
But
and inspiring, different types of
oh,
teachers and inspiring artistic uh,
yes,
fascination.
yes. But as we know, and as you've said, um, each student is different, and they're coming from a different location, a different idea. Um, I prefer teaching people who have some kind of a feeling of that they're ready for growth.
Mm.
Because LA, of course, is filled with, you know, lots of pop singers and, singers who just want strong voices. And I don't care. So I honestly, I don't care. Actually, several years ago, I changed my website to reflect that I don't care. No, that was put badly, but
That's awesome.
just to reflect that, that I have a spiritual point of view, and if you look through my site, you can pick that up, and if that speaks to you, then come on, give me a call, and which is great. I really liked doing that, and it worked in that way too. It was really good, but um, it's like, for instance, I have a 15-year-old student she wants to be a jazz singer. She plays a little piano, but she doesn't utilize it.
Mm.
Um, she's at the beginning of stuff, beginning of scatting and phrasing, and um, so as a teacher, it's challenging to get into her head and
Mm.
see how I can inspire her to learn the melody by just sitting at the piano and playing the melody and singing with it and discovering how beautiful it is and how it relates to the chords and how beautiful that is, and if you shift the sentence, how beautiful that is, and as you said, listening to different versions of the song. I don't want to hear, God, somebody showed up. They had learned Lush Life. Okay, they were kind of a beginner. They learned Lush Life from Lady Gaga. And so now Lady Gaga, thank you, Lady Gaga, for bringing standards in. I'm impressed and appreciative, and my girlfriend went to a show of hers and she said she was just totally giving it to talking about standards and jazz, and that's really great, and okay, you can learn it from that, but also you have to listen to Ella and, whoever else sang it or played it.
Yeah.
How do you inspire that? That's, to me, that's what that question talks about. How do you inspire an artistic spark? And I mean, I think it changes all the time, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting. That reminds me of a few a few sort of breakthrough moments that I've had with this one student lately where we're working on Mood Indigo. And for the longest time, it was like, well, I want my chest register to be stronger because I really want these low notes to feel full and all. It's like, great, that's amazing, tangible goal, all this sort of stuff. But and she spent a long, long, long time not primarily being a piano player, really plunking out the melody on piano. There are some important intervals in that melody to make sure that
Yeah.
you know what they are before you go around changing them. And so and she spent such diligent time doing this. And then we got to the point where I was like, I don't want you to think about technique. I don't want you to think about this melody. I want you to focus on what the story is. Like, what are you singing about? And we just had a few, it was just like really coincidental timing where we had a few moments, and actually a few lessons where like she had been having difficult week after difficult week after difficult week, and finally understood the lyric in like such a different way. And it was actually quite overwhelming for her in a really beautiful way. It was like, oh, this does, like, it doesn't matter how the voice sounds, it really matters like what you're communicating and what you're receiving, and how, like, there was a certain point in the lesson where like she sang the first, maybe 8 to 16 bars and then had to stop singing because she was so connected to what she was singing about that she started to cry.
Yeah.
And to me, this is where the artistic fascination comes in, is that I asked her to record herself singing that a few times, really feeling so connected to how she was feeling and how the lyric connected and resonated with her. And then to go back and listen to a few recordings from the weeks prior and listen to all those same recordings and see if she resonated with the same ones, having had that different experience of feeling so moved. And it was just so interesting, her coming back and being like, the one that I thought was my favorite, I just liked it because the voice sounded really good, but I don't hear any emotion in that. And then to have found this other version where now it was like all she's wanting in the whole interpretation of this standard is the emotion. It's like, to me, that's the fascination, is like, if you can
Yeah.
if you can guide the student toward having their own cathartic experience,
Yeah.
then they're going to seek that out. And then you're really seeing people's other folks' artistry through a different lens. And I don't know, it's just like
Yeah.
the joy of life, honestly, for me, is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that whole journey. So
I agree with you. And I was the other night I went to a small party of women, a dinner, about 10 of us, to welcome somebody back into town. And um, m- I'd have to say most of the singers, if not all, were semi-pros. Um, and I've been friends or a teacher for them over the years, and I've started a lot of venues and situations, so they would be part of that too. But and we had an hour or so of singing, with the pianist, and well, I almost like best when I'm at a workshop and I see singers getting up and reaching that, you
Hmm.
know. I almost like that better than going out and seeing somebody, unless it's, somebody fabulous. But,
Right.
you know, and those singers that got up, they were It was so comfortable. It was such a comfortable evening, and everybody knew each other and felt supported by each other, and they got up, and that's where they went. They went to that, you know, totally vulnerable, expressive spot, not seemingly caring so much about, the quality of the sound, or the excellence of the sound. And it was so beautiful. It's I mean, that's why we're doing this. I mean, you and I think so.
Yeah, yeah. It's so great to hear you say that too, because she had this moment where she stopped singing, and I think got a little, it's vulnerable to be moved while you're singing in front of someone else. And so stopped singing and pretty quickly was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not. And I was like, this is the most you've ever embodied the true meaning of a jazz singer. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, you were so moved that you couldn't sing for a few beats because you were really feeling an emotion. And I was like, you backphrased. I was like, and you didn't backphrase because it was cool to backphrase, or it would have
Yeah.
put a certain word on a certain downbeat of a certain chord change. I was like, you backphrased because you felt something. And I was like, that's the point. And she was like, and then it was this whole exciting, like, really, I really was like, I was really being a jazz singer, just that, it was really exciting. And then all of a sudden, the sadness was gone. But I think you're right. It's like, that's why we're doing this. Like, we're doing this to express something and to be moved, and all of the other stuff is important to study and work on. But it doesn't matter if there's
Yeah.
not something like deeper going on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That is the most challenging thing to teach.
Mhm.
Or teach. You're not really you're kind of removing barriers for people, but or showing them where the barriers are, and encouraging them to move those barriers out of the way, or maybe give an idea of how to move those barriers out of the way. And I know they always say that, especially singing teachers are, psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever. And that's why, because we're trying to reach these people in a different in a different way. It's not just the ABCs of how do you move your blocks away. You know,
Right. Yeah.
it's quite challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think always tell my students when they show up, this is at least half philosophy. So if you think it's not, you know, you're misleading yourself, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, it's funny. I'm remembering just when you were saying, like, you're also sort of being psychologist when you're when you're a voice teacher. It's like I've had so many important emotional insights during voice lessons.
Oh yeah.
I would vouch to say maybe more than in therapy. Like, it's just um
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And I think it's so important. And I think also folks are seeking that sometimes, when, like, knowingly or unknowingly, when they want to take voice lessons, they're
Yeah.
wanting to,
Exactly.
no matter whether they say like, oh, I'm here to learn how to belt or whatever it is. It's like, you're here to express something. Even if you don't know it yet, you actually want to express something, and that's why you want to be here. So
Well, so a lot of these people on know that I wrote this book. So it's called The Act of Becoming, and I actually wrote it over about 15 years, but during the pandemic, I actually put it together in a book. So, but what this is my observations over the years, teaching and noticing that the same lesson applied, in my case, applied to voice technique, life, and singing jazz. The same exact lesson. Like, for instance, communication. So, obviously, communication in life you know, is a great tool, right? To move on. Jazz singing, like singing actually singing jazz, scatting, whatever, if you focus on communicating, that is going to bring you along a great fluid path that actually ends up sounding worthwhile. And then in voice technique too, when you think of communicating, the voice technique goes, oh, click, 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 you know? So that's just an example, but I wanted to just share that with people. And, you know, somebody reading who does gardening and truck driving and, you know, they know different things. It's the same kind of thing. These, you know, if you can actually take a lesson that you've learned and see how it applies to your different interests in life, you can really get a lot out of that. So, you know, as we know, teachers always say, you know, we learn from teaching as well, you know, and those were some great realizations that I had in teaching for myself, you know.
Yeah. Reminds me a lot of The Artist's Way. Are you familiar with The Artist's Way?
It's funny you should say that because last week I was in France, and so I came home, and The Artist Way was hanging out on my table, and I was like, "Oh, why is that out? You know, maybe my friend took it out who was staying here."
Huh.
So I thought, I think I'll start it again. So I'm on my like fourth day of morning pages.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I love that. Yeah, I love that. So many of my experiences working through that book were sort of realizations like that of like, okay, my activity that I'm supposed to do is go on a walk and like pick up 3 rocks and bring them home. Like, honestly, what the hell is that? Like, what is like, this is not going to help me with music. You know, it's one of those things where I was just like, this is ridiculous, but like, I'm doing it to check the box. And then, you know, slowly I'm like, I don't know, what kind of rocks am I supposed to pick up? And so I just like pick up a stone and keep walking. And then I finally see one that I really like, and I pick up another one and pick up a few. And by that point, I'm like, oh, I have 4 rocks. I was like supposed to have 3. And then like I let go of the one that I don't like. And this whole time I'm like walking and searching, and it's like what rocks I'm drawn to helped me like realize what kind of mood I was in. And you know, it just sort of, it reminded me of a lot of composing. Like it was just like, I
Yeah.
often when I'm composing, I'm like, what am I even looking for? And I guess I'll start with this chord change, and then this melody will happen, and then this chord change. And eventually I'm like, oh, now I know what's happening here. I'm going to let go of that whole section. That's not what I want to say anymore. And, you know, it's just so funny to me that, you know,
Well,
going on
that
a
let
walk
go
with
of
the
that one rock. When you
Yeah.
said that let go of one rock, I mean, that's a lesson.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so,
It's great. That's great. Yeah. Another book that I've read, well, of course, a lot of people read these books, but so both of these books were written about 27 years ago. And then last year, the authors both wrote another book, which I found fascinating, which is Kenny Werner and Stephen Nachmanovich.
mm,
Now, so Kenny Werner's first book, right, which was hugely successful, and not only for jazz people, it was just, you know, yeah, incredible, life-changing stuff. And are you familiar with Stephen Nachmanovich?
by name, but not the book.
Free Play. It's called Free Play: Improvisation in Life and the Arts. And
Huh.
that was like a Bible for me. I just open it up and it's talking to me, you know. And it was really a great book. And then so both of them, of course, last year wrote new books. Took them like another 25 years to come up with their second book of, you know, presenting their second book. And yeah, but the artist's way, I'm drawn to books like that. Victor Wooten's book, what was that called? The Room or something, or I can't remember. Was that what it was called?
I think so.
Yeah,
That's right. It reminds me,
Taylor probably
have you
knows.
read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
It wasn't that a great?
It
That was
was
such a
uh,
great book.
it was such a great one. And like, you know, so many helpful lessons in there about like, you know, if the creativity shows up today, great. Like a good idea visited you. It's not that like you are great. Like I loved the like if nothing shows up, you're not worthless. And also if something shows up, like it's not all about you. Like I kind of love the like, removing of that. It's not like, oh, I wrote something great today. It's like, wow, great idea visited. How lucky, you know? I just found that so freeing as I was
Yeah,
working on this past record. Both of those books, Big Magic and Artist Way, were like the whole
yeah.
reason the record turned out the way it did. So
That's cool. You know what also I really love about both of those books is the concept that you have to do it again tomorrow.
yeah,
So like in Big Magic, she describes, well, first of all, she committed early on to writing every day.
yeah,
And so what she discovered was when she would start a project, she was first excited, then a few days in, she was like grossed out, and she wanted to stop, but she couldn't. She had to
yeah.
write the next day. And so every project, she realized that was the process. Oh my God, how valuable is that, you know?
I mean, honestly, so the title track of my record took me 2 full years to write. 2 full years from like, here's the idea I have to like it actually finally feels like I said what I wanted to say.
Yeah,
Big Magic and Artist Way were both such a a big driving reason behind the like this is not done yet, this is not done yet, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to work on it again, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to tweak this section, I'm going to bring this section into a lesson with this person that I've never met, because like all that sort of like, even I believe it was the Elizabeth Gilbert book that was like, if you don't feel creatively inspired, do the research about that thing. And so like one of the elements of sort of like the not the premise, but the idea behind the title track is essentially like the story of my grandma. She was a fundamentalist Christian and later in her life developed Alzheimer's. And it wasn't until she started to literally lose her awareness that she also lost the dogma. And she wasn't able to like unconditionally love until she also lost that conditioning of the mind. And I couldn't figure out a certain section. I didn't realize I couldn't figure out what I wanted to say. And I was like watching documentaries about like cults, and I was watching documentaries about fundamentalist Christianity. And I was just like, and it was helpful to feel like I did the work today and I showed up. And I also didn't necessarily have to like work on a section of the song, but like watching this documentary is still staying in the
yeah.
landscape of what I'm working on. And I found that so helpful just to sort of switch up the medium. And I feel like that's something that has been really valuable for me, and also I think has been really valuable for my students too. So for
That's
me, figuring
cool.
out there.
Yeah, and that actually emphasizes the idea that it's the process that's
Mhm.
valuable. Of course you want to end up with a good song, but it's the process is you can't escape that the process is, you know, what it is. And you know, we're trying to be in the moment. Well, showing up, in fact, this dinner that I had with these women, most everybody was older, and we were talking about various things, and this one woman said, she said, really, you just have to show up. That's what you have to commit to, because other than that, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You can plan, you can work towards it, whatever, but just showing up, you know.
Yeah.
How do you spend your days now? Are you like busy with various things, or are you kind of focused on certain?
I am so sad to say I am busy with everything but writing music. I'm totally and I feel very grateful to be in this phase because throughout the whole pandemic, I wished I was doing all of this, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, like I've mentioned a few times, I'm releasing a record in March. And so, as many of us freelance musicians, I'm doing it all. So I'm booking a tour, I'm applying for a grant for the tour, I'm, you know, setting up I'm just doing all of it, like getting securing the licensing and registering my own music at BMI, and you know trying to set up certain things and interviews and this and that, and hiring it's just the whole mess, the whole beautiful
Yeah,
mess of it
you're
all.
deep in, man.
Yeah, I mean,
Deep in.
I really, I'm kind of in that phase of releasing a project where I don't really feel like a musician right now.
Yeah,
I feel like an admin. Like I spend all day at the computer.
yeah,
Um, and it's fun, and I'm totally grateful. I'm totally grateful to be doing it, but I'm like, who knew I would, be like editing videos for social media all the time? Or, it's just one of those,
yeah.
it's just one of those crazy things. So, but yeah, I mean, also I'm part of other folks' creative projects a lot, which is always, it's like the fun reminder of like, this is why I'm doing all this computer stuff right now. But yeah, I'm heading into the studio next week, or actually 2 weeks from now, to record a project that I'm really excited about with a friend of mine from the Bay Area. He arranged, or actually wrote, a suite of music based on his grandmother's playwright, like words from his grandmother's playwriting and also from his father's poetry.
Hmm,
And so he's sort of arranged like a suite for octet. So we're headed to the studio to record that.
nice.
Um, I'm headed to DC next week for a few concerts, and just got off of this like whirlwind, amazing, couldn't ever have anticipated how fun it would be, Joni Mitchell tribute, which was kind of a fun, like dabbling into the theater world. It wasn't acting at all, but it was at a theater. And so, um, yeah, I guess they called it a cabaret. So myself and the co-star Robbie Schaefer, we created this set of music, created this show, like a tribute to Joni and Leonard, kind of weaving in our own stories and tidbits about their lives too. And but it was so amazing, like being at the same venue for 16 shows. Like the sound was the same, the set was the same, the lighting was the same. There was a wardrobe, team that, like,
Uh,
if I needed something pressed, or like, I just totally felt like royalty for a few days. And it was so different from walking into a club and being like,
did you bring your PA?
yeah, did you bring your birthday, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so it's been fun. It's been a
Wow.
whirlwind of different things, but right now I'm at the computer all day.
Wow. Well, that show sounds divine. Oh, I can just imagine. That must have been so great. And the
Top of the line
computer stuff,
overall.
I can relate to that too. In fact, this morning in my morning pages, I was I was actually writing. I have this like 28-page list of ideas of mine, like that cover everything. It covers music to listen to, gigs to get, ideas to come bring to fruition, phone calls to make, And so I was writing about that, and people, well, people talk about how I'm prolific in my actions. And yeah, that's true, because I think I got it from my mother. My mother was always going, "What are we going to do now?" It was like, it was that kind of energy. And I've never really loved just lying around doing nothing. That's not my idea of relaxation. It's like I want to do something without feeling stressed.
Yeah.
That's how I like to relax. And when I was younger, and my relationship, I was not with my present husband. It was with my first husband, and he was kind of like, really into what he was doing, and I was into what I was doing, and I had more energy, and those were the days of you had to call people, you had to send hard copies to Europe to get a gig, Um, so it was just a whole different energy and output. But I realized that, I really do like creating stuff sitting at my desk and, getting on computer. I like it. I'm not embarrassed to admit it. I like singing too. I like writing. I like that artistry and I crave it and, you know, I would never stop doing it, but I also do really like this admin stuff. I do like it. I mean, I don't like you know, the stuff that we don't like. I don't, the stuff that's just goes on and on and on and it's boring, but I don't like that. But I do like organizing and getting ideas and creating them and putting them out and inspiring people to do stuff. I like all that stuff. And yeah, I don't think there's any need to, limit yourself. Whatever, like you're doing what you need to be doing right now. Obviously, you're in the moment. It sounds like you're in the moment and you're benefiting from it, and plus you have a beautiful body of work to show for it. Um, I would like to hear something from you if you don't mind. Um, share my screen and um, let's see what else should I have dreamed or I don't know what would you suggest?
Um, yeah, I Have Dreamed is a good one. It's just a snippet from, actually, that's a concert that we played the day before we went into the studio to record the record. So,
You mean this record?
the record that will be coming out in March, this clip of I Have Dreamed was at the Art Boutique with the full band right before we went into the studio. So that could be a good one.
Yeah, let's hear that. There's Keith. Hi, Keith.
Yeah, Keith.
I have dreamed that your arms are lovely. I have dreamed what a joy you'll be. I have dreamed every word you whisper when you're close to me. How you look in the glow of evening. I have dreamed and enjoyed the view. In these dreams, I've loved you so that by now I think I know what it's like. to love, and we can see the rest of the world below us. From our pink cloud, there's no boundary to this magic land. As we go exploring, hand in hand, and we'll stay.
That was a beautiful combination of songs. Nice, nice medley. I know medley. The word medley is so old-fashioned, but it really is a medley. Yeah, that's really nice. Joyce asked if you have an excerpt to play of one of your Joni songs from the show.
Oh, there's a small clip of a bootleg on Instagram, but technically, I don't have a copy of the show yet.
Yeah,
Not yet.
you'll have
But
to
you can
keep.
follow me on Instagram and watch it.
All right, that's good. Um, any shows you want to promote that are upcoming?
Um, you know, there's not a bunch, it's kind of private events season more
Yeah.
than show season for me. But I have a show coming up that I haven't posted about yet in the DC area, in case anyone is in DC. It's at the Goethe Institute, which is in Northwest DC on December 11th at 2:30 in the afternoon. So that's one that's recent or that's coming up. And otherwise, I'll be posting dates for the CD release tour soon. But the
Where are
big,
you going for the tour?
hopefully all over. We're gonna start as of now at Blues Alley in DC on March 15th. And then we're gonna work our way through Virginia, do like Charlottesville and Lake Anna, and then we're going to Sharp Nine in Durham, and then a smaller venue called White Horse Black Mountain in Black Mountain, which is like Asheville area, North Carolina. Then we'll be at Middle C in Charlotte. I'm going down to UM to do like a vocal master class and a performance for the department. And probably Philly in April, Providence, Rhode Island, and at the end of April, we have some LA. I'm actually going to be at Sam First in May, so that'll be closer to your neck of the
What
woods.
day? Do you know?
May 18th, I believe it's a Thursday.
May 18th. Remember that, Dan. May 18th at Sam First.
So, all of this is kind of in the works as of now, but there will be a bunch of CD release dates coming out. So,
So, so here's another $1 million question. Are you bringing your band?
I'm hoping to. I for the last 2 tours I've done, I've brought a band well, actually, I guess that's not true. for the last two tours I've done, I've brought at least the whole band or part of the band, and I've just lost money both times. And so, no matter how many people come to a show and what percentage that you get, I mean, the last little run I played that was like DC, Virginia, Nashville, and ended in New York at Soapbox with that Soapbox show. After everything was said and done, and I paid the musicians, and honestly, I paid them obviously less than they deserve to be paid. At the end of the day, I lost $11.
11?
I lost 11. I didn't make a single after CDs were sold.
That's
And
not
all
bad.
the,
$11, not a bad loss.
I know, but if you think about all the hours booking the tour and booking the flights and doing all that, I'm like,
How much you spend on making the record,
oh my God, I know. I mean, how much I spent on making the record, I'm like, I haven't even, it's a whole, yeah. So I don't know if I'll bring the band is the short answer. I'm applying right now for a Jazz Road grant. So hopefully that will allow me to definitely, if I get that, that will allow me to bring the band for at least 6 of those dates. And yeah, the bass player that recorded on the album is based in the Bay Area, so he'll definitely play. I've kind of already spoken to him about the Bay Area and the LA date, but it's unclear if he'll be able to come out here for the run. I mean, I have dates basically from March through May at this point sprinkled everywhere, so I feel like I'm going to figure out personnel a little bit later, but once I can like offer folks a real chunk of time and money. But I'm hoping it's all part of it's all part of the like I sit behind the computer all day every day situation. So
What a life. In the old days when I used to go to Europe, I would totally book workshops first, and then, you know, well, I'm going to be in Switzerland at this blah blah blah, and can I have a gig there? Yeah, because then they didn't have to pay for me coming out. You're right, and I mean, in those days, I was coming home with about $700, for a week.
hey,
Yeah, that not bad, really,
I
but
mean,
things have changed. I have been going to Japan for years and years. But I was going to go to Japan in March 2020, and I was like, that was like right, as it was approaching. I was like, and because I would go to Hiroshima, Osaka, and Tokyo these days, so I was going once a year for the last 10 years, and then before that I went a lot, but I had somebody there booking me, but yeah, and so I haven't been there since 2019. But the thing is, um, there are gigs and there's a lot of teaching, and that's why I'm not really going. The gigs, I'm not so worried about COVID or anything with the gigs, but the teaching, a lot of times it's in very tiny rooms, and I don't think they would like to be breathing and singing, and I don't think I would like to be breathing and singing. So I'm kind of waiting. Japan has opened up again, but kind of waiting to see what the next, I don't know, 6 months brings. And I hate to not go to Japan because it's like my second home because I've been going there since the late 80s, you know. So, but yeah.
well, if you have any advice on booking workshops, I will take it. I feel like I have a few. I mean, like I'm going to UM and I'm going to Providence College, and I've been in communication with a few other schools, but it just seems like I am not a big enough name for anyone to want me. So I'm like, I don't know if there's a good way of, or maybe there's like there's a workshop scene the way there's like a club scene, but
Well, you might either get in touch with or observe a woman named Cathy Cousins. She is the queen of getting work for herself, and she's been that way for years. She's her singing style is like a mixture of jazz and R&B, and she's great, and she's made a career of writing lyrics over the years. But I mean, she hasn't had like a live-in partner for years and years. So she, I'm telling you, she is a working girl, and she is so good at booking. Like she'll book high schools too, like for your for like where you got the college gigs. Look around in the area for high schools, and they can throw in another $200 or $300 for you. But I mean, just offhand, my first inclination would be to speak to friends who are scattered around the country who are teaching. You know, that would be my first inclination of reaching for that. And also, I feel kind of, you know, kind of like this is talking about what we talked earlier about, regarding prejudice about being a woman, or, what the problems were as you were coming up, and how kind of clueless about it I was. But I don't know. I'm definitely a half full glass person. But I actually don't think at least 50% of the people you would talk to care about if you are a big name.
Huh, interesting.
I think that who you are speaks a huge amount. And the communication that you have with people, it's, kind of your typical great selling tools, right? They always say you find out about the other person. You communicate with them. How are you today? Oh, your wife is sick. Oh, really? How long was she? Just really like actually make friends with people. And people are more inclined to look at you in a different way, like, oh, this person is really nice. So what do they have to offer? Oh, yeah, I could probably fit this person in, you know? So I really, but I think the what you have going is, I think it speaks worlds. And you I think you should remember too that it's kind of process like in the way that um, you want to be involved with people who recognize who you are. You don't want to try and sell yourself to somebody who just doesn't get it, you know? So, yeah, I mean, look for connections, uh, personal connections, and then build from there. That's what I would jump at right away. But you're extremely talented, and you've had a beautiful education, and I mean, who wouldn't want to try and make room for you, in their right mind, you know? Yeah, my suggestions.
I love it. That's great. Yeah.
And with that, we're we've done 2 hours. So,
Yeah.
thank you for hanging out for 2 hours.
Yeah. Thanks for all of your thoughtful questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to keep an eye on you, and see what beautiful things you're coming up with. And yeah, it's been very nice. I'm so glad that I followed my instincts when I heard you, and I was like, wow, I like this girl. Who is this?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I so appreciate you reaching out, and yeah, just appreciate all the different categories we kind of bopped around to. It was very and also all of Taylor's very thoughtful questions. I can't wait to go back and look through the chat and see what else I missed.
Taylor's cool. Reach out to him. He's a good guitarist. He's extremely thoughtful. He asks deep questions. Like I said, he interviews the people who come to you. I always forget the letters.
UNT.
UNT.
Uh-huh.
And so he actually interviews, people like Allison Miller, and and he's a very bright, nice person. So I would reach out to him too.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate
You're welcome, Danielle. Take care. Have a good day.
it.
And I just want to tell people too. Tomorrow I have it moved around, shifted around. I was going to have Jim Keltner on originally, then he had to postpone. Then I was going to have a bass player, Jeff Littleton. He had to postpone. Now I have a French singer who's really good named Chloe Perrier, and she's on live tomorrow. So it'll be really fun. All right, there. Have a great evening. Okay, bye.